with wonderful listeners and readers here today. I really welcome you and thank you all for your support of Tasmanian poetry. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we're meeting today, the Walleah and Walleah people, and their continuing custodianship and connection to this beautiful area where we are fortunate to live and work. Ron's giving me the move forward signal. Great. So I'm Esther Ottaway, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to the launch of Incandescence, which is a luminous new poetry collection by one of Tasmania's favourite poets and one of just 10 poets longlisted in this year's Tasmanian Literary Awards, Susan Austin. Susan's first book, Undertow, is one of my favourite books of the last 15 years, and it has the great honour of looking like this, all wrinkly, because it's such a good book that I had to take it with me into the bath, right? And we know that's the mark of a really good book, if you've got to take it into the bath. And then her first novel, which beautifully lays bare the experience of infertility, is another of my favourite books. So gripping and emotionally compelling, and it was my great pleasure to share the day of the launch of Dancing with Empty Prams with my own book about girls and women on the spectrum. She doesn't seem autistic. Today we celebrate a new book and we honour a voice that burns with insight, tenderness, humour and fire. Many of you will know Susan not only as a poet, but as a mental health occupational therapist, a mother, an activist, and a generous member of our Tasmanian literary community. Her work is deeply grounded in lived experience, giving us poems rich with social observation, domestic detail, and honestly rendered experiences of motherhood, memory, grief, resilience, and hope. In Incandescence, Susan has crafted a collection that arises from the everyday while expanding into the universal. These themes of parenting, caregiving, surviving a pandemic, holding a marriage together, walking through grief, and making space for joy, even amid exhaustion, mean that her poems glow with warmth and insight, even when they are exploring moments of deep difficulty. Susan's poetry is also full of humour, sometimes gentle and sometimes biting. We see it in the verb-filled, joyful and exhausting poem, The Purposeful Occupations of a 2-year-old. I'll read you the opening. Wall scribbling, stick poking, sand throwing, rash cream smearing, toast tossing, cup tipping, crumb swiping, chewed cashew spitting, clothes snipping, bead sucking, backyard absconding, roadside dashing, and so on through to the end, where the child is first story competing, lap wrestling, into bed protesting, middle of the night calling. As well as formal poems, Susan invents her own forms. In one instance, a poem in the bars of a cage, and in another, a Venn diagram where she overlays the frustrations of two people in a relationship with their area of commonality in the centre to a brilliant effect. There is also portraiture of others beyond the family, fictional or near-fictional characters, painted with Susan's clear-eyed insight and deep compassion as a mental health occupational therapist. Then there's a powerful COVID sequence bringing back the heartbreaking distancing of those years, as in Outsiders. My husband returns from Flinders Island, drops bread and milk at the door. He stands 3 metres away, mask on, to talk. My son runs to hug him. We shout in unison, no. and Susan's deeply incisive reflections of our modern lives, as in Quality Time, which I'll read in full from the book. My iPhone, Facebook, weather, calendar, emails, texts, news, my curved back, my slight frown, my 2-year-old, shaking her red egg-shaped maraca, beaming at me until I notice her joy. I'm a writer who can't turn a page. Here we are. I feel those very distilled poems are Susan at her best. She's able to cut to the bone of matters. She's attuned to the disorientation of our contemporary lives and capable of capturing so much emotion in a handful of lines. And I'm reminded of Gwen Harwood's parenting poems, full of that conflict. These moments accumulate throughout this collection, the relational, the bittersweet, the luminous. And they reflect Susan's gift for balancing vulnerability and strength, fragility and fortitude. Susan's voice is important and clear, a voice you want to return to. These poems are so often about seeing, really seeing the world, others and ourselves. And they are a gift for all of us who are navigating messy, beautiful, full to the brim lives. So please join me in congratulating Susan on the release of Incandescence. She is indeed a bearer of light as she engages us fully with the work of life and love. Please welcome Susan.
Thank you so much, Esther. And thank you to Tim and Rowan and Fullers Bookshop for hosting today's event. And thank you all for coming. It's actually really heartwarming to have you all here. I guess poetry has always been with me. So I've been writing poetry since the age of 8, and my mother encouraged me by buying me this exercise book, which I was thrilled about. At the time it was my first hardcover exercise book. I thought this is special. And it was 240 pages. Has anyone ever owned such a large exercise book? And I set myself the goal of filling it up with final draft poems in my neatest handwriting. So yeah, it's kept me going over the years. The handwriting changes from that kind of size to more that kind of size. And my main goal in life was to fill this book up with poems. This goal was interrupted somewhat after I moved to Brisbane when I was 17 to go to uni. And there I got involved in environmental campaign groups and social justice groups, and ended up becoming the coordinator of a socialist youth group, at the same time as paying my way through a high course load university degree, and by doing 2 or 3 part-time jobs. And not much time for poetry. But when I was travelling overseas, when I was 24 or 25, I took that book with me and I actually finished it in Ireland, I think, and I was like, wow, I've achieved my life's goal at 25. What do I do now? But yeah, the poems in that book, and many of the poems that came after, tend to plot my personal development and many of my life's experiences. And I really like having this kind of record to look back over, even though that's not the main reason that I write. It's just a bit of a bonus. And I'm so grateful to have released 3 books into the world. and for all the people that have made that possible. For those that aren't familiar with my books, this little book, Undertow, largely grew out of experiences in my 20s when I was travelling and learning how to be an occupational therapist in South Brisbane, in Logan, in a low socioeconomic area, on the kind of front line of a community mental health team. And also as a solo backpacker going around the world and finding myself in some pretty crazy situations. So this poem kind of grew out of that, as well as my emerging understanding of feminism and that kind of thing. And then, as Esther mentioned, Dancing with Empty Prams tells the story of a woman whose plan to have a baby took her on a journey she never expected. And it was inspired by infertility experiences that had a big impact on me in my 30s. And my new book, Incandescence, is largely drawn from experiences I've had over the last decade in my 40s. So for me, I think it's a collection that illuminates the wonderful highs and the shattering lows of parenting. The ways that we connect and we disconnect with each other, including through the early COVID pandemic. The things and places that we turn to for solace when life gets hard, and how we can struggle within interpersonal relationships. So some of you know that I deeply love nature and love getting out into nature, but for some reason I'm just more drawn to writing about people. And all the fascinating business. So I hope it looks at people with compassion and enhances understanding and connections between us. So I just have a few people to thank. Tony, Pamela and Kate from my poetry circle for being such supportive poetry peers, and to my book group, who are the best groupies one could hope for. I've dedicated the book to my husband and my two gorgeous kids, Katie and Rory, for their love and for sharing the ride with me and giving me so much to write about. Thanks to Ralph Westman from Walleah Press for publishing all 3 books and for being just a real shining light for poets in Tasmania and elsewhere. And also to my talented friend Jen Lorimer Shanks, who designed all 3 covers with lots of toing and froing about the designs, and to my gang of friends who provided artistic opinion and input. And for Incandescence, I have my lovely friend here, Pen, to thank for the beautiful photo of a leaf, which is on the front cover. And of course, I've got Esther to thank for her trusty support and being such an invaluable friend with parenting and poetry. And Dr. Gina Mercer, who couldn't make it today, but she also really supported me with this book and helped to edit the manuscript. So the book's actually been out since January, but I've been through a bit of a rocky time in my life earlier this year, and I wanted to give it to the launch that it deserves. So I am pleased that I waited until now and have been able to kind of celebrate with you today. I told Jeremy that I've been on a bit of a roll. I've had like 2 books in 2 years almost, and this event is really important to me because I may not ever publish another one. Who knows what's in store, but I certainly don't have another one to pop out next year at this point anyway. So it's for these reasons that I'm really grateful that you were able to come and help me celebrate today. I really appreciate it. So I'll read a handful of poems from the book, starting with one of the lighter ones. So many of you might be able to think of a time when you set out on a long day walk or a multi-day bushwalk. And after a certain number of hours, like for me it's usually about 5 hours with a heavy pack on, You might start to wonder why you thought such a plan seemed like a fun idea. And your mind might start to wander to all the other things that you could be doing with your time instead, which at the time seemed so much more enjoyable and sensible. So this poem might contain some advice for you. Advice for those who find themselves doing long bushwalks for some crazy reason they can't remember. When walking is trudging, when you're simply soldiering onwards, it pays to think of nothing, to morph into a zombie of automated movement, each foot seeking a steady step of its own accord. You are the body being hauled along by two fully capable legs. So chill out, think of nothing. Don't think of how refugees would feel fleeing Iraq with everything they could haul along on mine-pocked, death-rocked roads. Don't dwell on how it would feel to be an Aboriginal girl following a rabbit-proof fence through the desert, or to be a soldier slogging through mud on Kokoda's trail. These thoughts will leave you more weary. And don't try thinking that your pack is as light as a feather. Your mind is not stupid and will overcompensate to prove you wrong. Don't pretend your destination is just beyond that next rise, because your legs will go on strike when you arrive to find just another rise. Don't count your steps, as that will amplify your challenge and disturb you. Don't think of poems to describe the scenery, as your eyes will soften and you might trip. No, best to think of nothing. Let your legs carry you along. Relax into the monotonous aching of this ancient activity. Definitely don't think about fish and chips or the cushy sofa at home. Does anyone find that the harder their life is, the more likely they are to get the urge to share rosy photos on Facebook? There's a strange phenomenon going on there. I don't post much on Facebook anymore. In fact, I think most people have dropped off their enthusiasm. But some years ago, after sharing some of my poems about parenting with a fellow poet, she was really surprised at the tone of my poems and the content of them, because she said the photos that you post on Facebook are so, give the impression that you're really loving motherhood, you've smiley, happy impression of your lives, and she never would have guessed that I was finding motherhood challenging. And I laughed and then shared the following poem that I'd written about the difference between a photo on Facebook and the actual experience. It's called Salmon Ponds. Gorgeous sibling Facebook photos, matching navy track pants, one with pink beanie and pom-pom on top, one with white wispy hair, arm around the other's shoulders, looking at the camera, smiling cutely. It was freezing. My hands turned to ice in 10 minutes. It was day 8 of husband being away for work. It was an outing planned for the sanity-salvaging 45-minute drive there and back. It was the morning after being up through the night with toddler teething troubles, woken early by a daughter. It was after toy pram fights and 3 timeouts before packing the bag. On the way there, after wrestling son into seat with some force, after stopping numerous times to cajole him to put his arms back in the straps, after he removed shoes and socks which had been a struggle to put on, after he ripped a page out of my favourite childhood book, it was pointing out cows and swans, explaining paper mills, and singing along as the frog jumped out of the pond. On the way home, it was relieved silence as they both slept, and I wondered how to resuscitate my mood, where to suture my patience, how a simple outing could have been so onerous. It was only the small things, the fights over fish feed, pellets flung to the ground as one snatched a cup from the other, the anxiety of watching a toddler saunter close to the edge, the slow motion response to my "Look, a fish jumped! Look, a fish swimming! See its colourful tail swishing!" My pointing and exclaiming, which failed to assist them to ever spot the fish. The fact that neither ate their treat, maple syrup pancakes, so I ate them all and felt sick and bulky. That Son started pulling apart the already ripped back of his high chair and wouldn't desist. That he cried out repeatedly to be let down when I was still sipping my tea. That they took turns banging their spoons on the table. The trip to the loo with me wrestling him away from bin, toilet paper, tap, soap, grabbing him up as he commando crawled across the dirty floor to evade me. The second trip to the loo 30 minutes later, which resulted in no more 3-year-old we, just more 2-year-old wrestling. The fights over sandwiches, drink bottles. The leisurely walk along the creek where I was hoping to stretch my legs, get a slight pace going to warm up, but where I had to stop every metre because Son refused to sit in pram, wouldn't walk in the right direction, or actually follow any instructions to leave the gate open. Don't climb through the creek fence. Hurry up. And daughter refused to hop out when I did finally convince Son to hop in. It's just little things, overreactions, inflated expectations, taking things too seriously. But look, here are my adorable children, smiling sweetly at the camera, her arm around his shoulders, beside the glistening pond. Imagine, if you will, the lovely time we had. Thank you. So I spent the last 5 years running groups for people with mental health issues at the Hobart Clinic. And it's lovely to have some of my colleagues and participants from those days here. During that time, I taught and practiced myself a lot of mindfulness and acceptance skills, and this poem is grounded in some of those practices. It's called Ode to a Park Bench. Thanks for taking me, the weight of me, the hard, the soft, the heft, the ache of me, for being still, for being here, where I can stop, sit, push my feet down onto these paving stones, rein in shaky, wayward breaths, counting back from 10. Thoughts weft and jostle. I imagine them passing by, like cars, like clouds, but one doesn't drift. It lodges its pungent bulk next to me. You are a bad mum, it snarls. My guts sink into these souls, these stones. You listen too. Your weather-hardened boards frown. You hold me. Your planks curve against my bumpy spine, buttress my weary back. I tune in to the quietly ecstatic trees, rustling maroon leaves, lingering taste of soy chai tea, smell of mulch, the salty tang of the neighbouring impervious sea. Soon the thought gets bored and moves along. I study your russet grainy wood, lean my right side against your steel armrest, feel the tree-born goodness of you under my thighs. You furnish me with the strength to rise. I do love a good park bench. All right, this little poem is a sonnet that I wrote to record, when I was feeling nostalgic for all the little unnoticed milestones that our kids grow up, like the last time they might need us to push them on the swing, or the last time they need us to cut up their sausage for them, or things like that. It was initially written as a response poem to one of Esther's lovely parenting sonnets called Sonnet for 15 in her beautiful and prize-winning collection. This one, Intimate, Low Voice, Delicate Things. And my poem is called Sonnet for Lost Lasts. His class lines up in pairs at the berry farm. His free hand is held out for me to find. I'm surprised to feel his whole hand in my palm. He used to curl his fingers around one of mine. Another little last, like the daytime nap. Last time I hold his hand to cross a street. Last picture book read snuggled in my lap. The final time I help him brush his teeth. When will be the last we share a bath? No camera will snap the final trolley ride. The moment plastic cups give way to glass. His fluffy monkey comforter will slide, with the glee he gets from using arms to fart, into that chest of lost lasts in my heart. And just while we're on a bit of a sonnet roll, I wrote this poem to record some memories of my Nana Austen and what she was like in her final years. And it was inspired by a visit I made to her when Rory was just a baby. It's called Still Has the Touch, for Anne Joan Austen, great-grandmother. Been entertaining next-door neighbour's flies, she grins at me, across the table set with lamingtons, shop bought against her pride. They'll have to do, can't bake much now, my pet. Remember when I used to let you wrap lettuce leaves with sugar, my little treat? And you'd do anything to avoid your daily nap. So we'd go for walks all up and down the street. Baby frets. Despite an arthritic spine, she manoeuvres down next to him on the floor. It's been a long time since I had all mine. I don't know how to soothe them anymore. Yet her wrinkled touch slows his restless cries. Or did he catch the incandescence in her eyes? All right, and the last poem I'll share with you today is a bit of a transition poem. So for a long time, it felt like all I was writing was shopping lists and questions to ask child health nurses, or text messages asking Jeremy when he's coming home. And then I started to emerge from the chaotic early years and was able to write this. It's called Ready for More Than Nursery Rhymes. It's a bit of an ode to poetry. Poetry. I've kept my distance from you for 3.5 years, and that's okay, because I was making new people, 2 of them, and really life trumps poetry. But without poetry, life is a bleached coral reef, missing connections, colour and zest. So I'm edging back to you, in between nappy changes and lullabies, liquid Panadol and my own lonely pillow. Poetry, forgive me for snubbing you. Remind me how to observe more than the swollen gums of the next tooth, more than the yearning for sleep-ins. Come and save me from the repetition of the weekly vacuum, the dreaded bath scrub, the urgent late afternoon questions of what to cook. I know some things, like those indescribable love-blossomed smiles from my babies, are outside your scope of practice. But I need you to rescue me from burnt meatballs, temper tantrums at the kitchen gate, and this chasm between experience and words. Poetry, I've taken advantage of your patience. Will you have me back? Thank you.
think we could listen all day, couldn't we, to Susan's beautiful and very relatable poems. She'll be signing books for you now. Fullers have asked me to let you know that they're available for purchase at the normal place, just near the front there at the counter. And then Susan will be in this area if you want to come and say hi and have your book signed. Thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate your support, and have a lovely afternoon.